Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 3 of Opus 16 Emissaries of Light set review. I am lucky, of course, to be joined by Mr. Eureka himself. Jared, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about you?
Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. Quick shout out to Massidia Gaming for these awesome thumbnails that you'll see at the start of the video. Alex is a good friend of mine, and I always appreciate his help on this. But folks, we got to wrap this setup. So we've talked about the main 6 elements. Let's jump into what we got for Light and Dark, and then we'll touch on those Final Fantasy X starter cards. So first off, we have Warrior of Light here, who is a very cool card. He's going to get more power for the other forwards you have, and since he's light, you kind of have this generic effect now that in any deck, I don't know, he kind of strikes me as like a cancel your opponent's battle phase, because they're not going to be able to get through your forwards. Even if you got something with 1,000 power, it can just block and block and block and block because it can't be broken to the end of the turn. Really like the artwork, really cool card, man. I'm such a Warriors of Light honk that it kind of almost bums me to see more and more Warriors of Light like in the light element, and we'll see more of that in a second here, but like they've already got so many choices. They can't fit all these in here, so when I get more and more, I'm like, what do they want us to do with these cards? Where do they want us to put these? Like, and this is one of those ones that, like, I think it's a solid, generically good card for what it does, but I wonder if it, like, just doesn't quite do, because, again, it's still a light and dark slot, so I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with this card, and yet I still wouldn't be surprised if, like, nobody played it. How do you see it?
Yeah, I think that's a mostly good summary. This is another one of the cards that we touched on during the Hobby Japan stream a little while back. I think I said most of it there, but this is like a generically good card. I don't think that you are able to play this in the Warrior of Light a lot of time. If you're playing like a normal mid-range version, then this might be better than the 3 CP win one. If you're playing the loop version, then unfortunately you need the fire one to get infinite power, so it won't be able to be slotted in that version of the deck. That being said, I think you're totally right. It seems like torture at this point that we still just like can't search Cosmos because there's so many like good light Warrior of Light options. You know, you have Lena, you have Refia, you have this guy, you have the older Warrior of Light, you have the new Barca we're about to talk about, but it's just like you're just not allowed to play those because you have to play whatever, like just pick one, and a lot of the times that one, or you might not even be able to play like, you know, any, because you have to play wall or you know whatever it is, and you have to play, you know, whatever the flavor for the current meta is. And so, yeah, I think this is more of a generic card. If you just play like a random, like slightly aggressively tilted deck where your opponent is probably going to be trying to pick off your forwards, you know, say maybe you're playing an Agrius deck that just punches or ice or whatever. I think this has a much better better chance of being slotted into those kinds of like aggressive mid-range decks than it is going to be against or in Warriors of Light itself.
Yeah, I actually like it quite a bit as an aggro tool, especially a deck that's like, look, I'm just going to go in and hit you with forwards, because usually those decks' weaknesses is a board wipe. Is that all right? They hit the you know, Susano, the Titan, whatever, whereas this Warrior of Light, other than Shantoto, will just stop all those board wipes. So I think this could fit pretty well in those aggressive decks like you mentioned.
And one more small point here is that this card is really funny to use with Lail. You make your opponent attack into your Lail over and over again, and then they just die.
That is, I like that. I might have to try that combo. That's fun. No, yeah, so fun card. So as a Final Fantasy fan since, gosh, I don't know, 1992, 93, whenever I played 6 for the first time, which I thought was 3, it's always been my favorite series. I love everything about it. I've always been a big fan of the original team of Yoshitaka Amano and Yukito Ito, or Ida. I probably said his name incorrectly. Nobuo Uematsu, Sakaguchi, all those guys. And I'm pretty well versed with it. But on occasion, I get surprised with some Yoshitaka Amano art that I've never seen before. And this Bartz is one of them. And oh man, gorgeous. I think this art is gorgeous. I love that he's got his arm around, I'm assuming that's Lena, and full big moon is so beautiful. If only the effect matched it. So again, it's not that it's bad, because he's only costs 1 and then you just pay 4 to at any time break any forward. Like, that's not a bad effect. And then you can pay 2 to then remove him once he's in the break zone, reveal 5. But again, okay, well, you have to add a Job Warrior of Light, so unlike the other one, you probably can't just stick this anywhere if you want to get that other payoff. Like, And again, he's another light warrior of light, and we've got so many of those, and it's such beautiful artwork. Like, I hope I pull some of these because gosh darn is it gorgeous. But I just don't see where I'm going to play this. Like, even in something like Bart's Boko, well, we have Noctis now. Noctis is the light card you want in that deck. So even though this guy would have
you can't
haste,
play it because it's Bart's. Though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and he's light Bart's. Like,
yeah,
man, go ahead.
I'd make a light Bart's eventually, so this is probably one of like checking off their bucket list kind of things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really unfortunate that this beautiful card is impossible to play, because any deck that could possibly want to play it is just like gated by the fact that they have other cards with this name and other light cards. So it's sad. It would be nice if we could somehow overcome all of the restrictions around this card and play it, but we'd have to like change it from a light card to a win card or something. And even then, it would be kind of sketchy because you couldn't play the crystal gaining Barts, which is such a good card. Yeah. So.
Man, it just makes me so mad. I want to kill Chaos. Oh, and perfect. Here he is. This is our Chaos Legend. So this is kind of a funny card. If your opponent controls Shantoto, you can play it for free. And this is one of those cards that, like, I can't see this ever being a staple in anything just because it's so situational. It's so quirky. But I like the idea that you can just steal one of your opponent's cards. And in particular, any other time we've had that mechanic, it's usually tied to a forward. It's like, as long as Don Corneo is on the field, or, you know, you got to kill this ninja to do it or whatever. So I like this is just, nah, I'm just going to take that. That's pretty cool. And then, assuming Chaos can live, you can then, if they were to ever like try to kill that, be like, oh no, well, I'm going to sacrifice your forward off too to break it. Like, I think this card could be kind of fun in some goofy-esque decks, but it's just too, I don't know, maybe if you don't care about paying that high cost, but 11's like way too much. So I don't know. Chaos, I kind of have trouble evaluating.
Yeah, I kind of want them to make like a Jack Garland card at some point that like has all of the elements or something like that, and then like, you know, the Chaos becomes 0 and then Chaos steals Jack. It would just be so thematic, right? But yeah, this is probably a card that you'll see maybe pop up in like a deck over the course of the Opus, and then we'll forget that it exists. So
there we are.
It's a sad one, but.
More great Yoshitaka mono art. This is Twintanya, which is a beast. And this card, man, some people were really high on this. I'm really not, just because I don't know. Like, so he's a 2-cost, so he can be brought in off of Realm, and that's cool. But he also, because he's a monster in all situations, so he dies to everything. He's an Amaterasu range. He dies to forward hate. He dies to monster hate. And the thing is, if there was a way to abuse his counters, I think I could try to experiment with, but he'll only ever shoot off a single counter and only a single 7k. Like, if there was a way to, like, hey, if you can reactivate him and dull him to get like 4 counters on him, he shoots off every counter he has. We're like, oh, okay, that might be kind of neat. But since he's always limited to just that single counter shot anyway of 7k, like, I don't know, I feel pretty underwhelmed by this guy, as cool as the art looks.
Yeah, I think it's I have some mixed opinions on this card. I think that this card is good, but it's like so situational that I don't really expect it to make any big waves. It is just a 2 CP 8k, which is, you know, that's not bad. You know, opening yourself up to the monster break stuff in addition to the other stuff, that's not so good. However, it also gets the plus side of, you know, you can bring it in off of Realm, or you can bring it in off of the new Mira if you've taken 2 or more damage or whatever. So I think that there are some trade-offs there. Oh, and you can switch it with, you know, Donette and Nagmalado too. So there is some of that sort of thing. I think if you told me that this effect, or this card had an effect that deals damage based on how many Giga Flare counters it had, and you asked me how much damage I thought that would be, I don't think the answer would have been 7,000. That feels like a really big flavor fail. Like, it's supposed to be the most powerful like attack in the game, basically, and this just steals 7,000, which is kind of weird. Obviously, they had to do that for balance purposes. Right. Yeah. So yeah, I do like this card a lot. I think one of the reasons that I like this card is that the Earth cards and all of the new monsters and all of the new monster support in particular, they really want you to have damage 1, 2, 3. I think 3 is really the big break off point for the 2 CP hero monsters in the set, and one of the best ways to take damage is Zodiark, and this is a dark monster that turns on Zodiark. So that's something I've thought about quite a bit, is that, well, if I'm playing Mira and Cactar for damage stuff, and it's not really much of a stretch, and I'm probably playing Tyro to search for Realm as well. It's not really that much of a stretch to put in Rydia and search for Zodiark and then turn on all of my monsters at the same time. And it is kind of one of those, against the odds, kinds of like wonky, janky decks. But in terms of like powerful payoffs for playing around those kinds of cards, well, having Twintania, playing Zodiark, and then hitting your opponent in the face with a bunch of 0 CP, 7k monsters is pretty solid among those. And I think this does do a good job of kind of like tying all of the ideas that the deck has together into something cohesive instead of just being like wonky janky stuff.
Amano monsters, march! I'm glad you brought up that flavor point too. Giga Flare is supposed to be stronger than Mega Flare, which is Bahamut's special. Yeah. So it's kind of funny. This one's so tiny. Well, folks, that's Light and Dark. Let me try that again. Well, folks, that's Light and Dark. Wrapping up there. Now we got a special Category 10 starter deck to talk about. So first we've got Jekt, Dad of the Year, of course. Maybe depending on who you ask. I don't know if Titus would agree with that. But so he's going to reward you for the more 10 characters you play. He also counts as backline. He'll always do 5k on entry because he does count himself. And in particular, it's nice that, again, if someone's going to remove him, you can just break him. You can just put him in the break zone and grab a light or dark character. So I have had the pleasure of being able to play with a lot of these cards. My deck is mainly wind and water, so I haven't gotten to try a lot of these fire cards, nor have I gotten to try Dark Sin, so maybe Jared can attest to that more than I originally could. But he seems like he's fine for what he does, and I actually do play one extra copy in my wind water as a another version of Jackbox, just because that special is so good. But did you gotten to try out Jekt at all?
Yeah, I've played with this card a little bit, and mostly in Firewind is where I decided to play him, because he does search, Kadaj or Shinryu, and those are some pretty potent cards. I did like it. I don't think that his damage scaling with Category 10 cards is really important. You probably just have him and Brother, maybe a Lulu, maybe a Braska. But, just imagine that just enter the field, deal 5, 6k, and that's more than enough a lot of the time for the size of forwards nowadays, and then being able to sack himself off to immediately search is quite good. That being said, he's not like, an overwhelming character by any means. A lot of the time when you play him, you might have already drawn one of your lighter dark cards, so you kind of have to play a few to really make use of it. A lot of people were saying that, like, Sin is really good when you have it at your hand because you can do the cost thing. But if you just play Jekt, then you kind of don't want to pay another 3 to activate the Sin in the first place. And then Sin's kind of a dead card in your hand. So there's kind of some, there's some synergies and some non-synergies. I think the most happy I was searching Shinryu with him, because Shinryu is just a very solid, albeit situational card that is difficult to search in the modern meta.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was pleasantly surprised by this card, but I wasn't exactly overwhelmed, I would say.
That's fair. Next we have Bahamut, and man, I've always liked the design of all the stuff in 10. This has always been my favorite Bahamut design. He's always been my favorite summon in all the Final Fantasies. I could gush about his Mega Flare special forever. As far as this card goes, really good in a fire deck when you can pay it for 1. I don't think you ever really want to pay 10 for this. It is nice that it does have the removal on it, so that way if it's a key forward that you don't want to get recurred. But yeah, again, I haven't really tested this one, but I just can't imagine playing 6 for this feels very good.
Yeah, paying 6 for it has been a little underwhelming. So you basically only ever play it when you're reducing the costs, which you can really only do really once, or maybe if you're really lucky twice. But you probably don't want to activate it twice because you want to recur some of your own cards. So you basically get it once, and so just as a one-of in random fire decks, or if you're playing, the 10 3-color or 2-color decks with a lot of 10 cards in it, you can definitely make this card work, and it's probably worth the slot. It's just like a nice one-of that you can just put in there and not really think about how many slots to run so much. Just having a nice just one-of removal spell there, it has been good for me.
Great point. And if you got Moody, it's free because it just reactivates itself. So a card that I think instantly, this is what caught everyone's attention when they saw all these sets, and this is Braska's. I know my buddy really liked it. He built a deck around it immediately because he was like, dude, it turns summons into a win condition because of Grand Summon. Really neat card, and what I like about it is that it's Amaterasu proof because it actually doesn't have any auto abilities. It's just a field effect and then 2 specials. And we'll see this with the Waka too. I really dig when cards have specials with alternative costs, especially when they're actually like affordable and a way to do them. And I've seen my buddy use it as a neat little control deck, and it does, I can see the snowball effect of like, oh, out of nowhere, boom, boom, you just lost 2 of your best forwards and you just took a point of damage. It's like, oh, I'm on a higher damage value than like I was anticipating being on. So really neat card. It's been really fun to see people build around this one. I don't know how much of a staple it'll be or if summons will ever be. You know, I don't know what kind of staying power it has, but it's a cool card.
Yeah, I think this is my second best card out of the cycle out of the 10 starter exclusives. This card has been just absolutely amazing in basically every deck that I played it in. Obviously, you have to run a certain density of summons to make it work. However, that's not really like a particularly high bar to set when Amaterasu and Brynhilde are like the best summons in the game. So you basically, every time you play a fire deck, have at least like 6 summons. So if you can fit in another 3 to 4, then this card just puts in so much work. There's been like some middling in the discussion about the card where like, well, if my cards all of my summons already do damage, then I don't really need Braska to make them deal an extra 2k or whatever, right? But I think that's a little short-sighted because Braska is making them do the damage for 0, which is a lot different than, you know, paying 2 or 4 for Bahamut to deal 9k, or casting Amaterasu when you really didn't care about the auto in the first place, or paying 2 for Brynhilde. Brynhilde only reaches 5k and kind of loses to Stack Chicken in a lot of ways, because if you don't get the drawback, then you just lose it. Dealing that extra 2k is relevant there. So I think that this card has a future. I think it's been very good for me. I expect it to do a lot of work in the upcoming set too. Given that there have been a few more expensive-ish summons at like the 4 cost, which are a little more difficult to play than what we really want to, what we really expect to show up in the format in the form of, you know, 2 CP cards. And I think Braska does a good job of handling those.
All right, and now a card that I actually underrated quite a bit when I first saw it, but playing this card in practice, I love this card. So I have a 10 Guardians deck built. If anyone wants the list, I'd be happy to contribute it to it. I've even might make a whole deck tech on. I've just been enjoying it so much. And this card is what starts kind of an explosion play, especially if you're on damage 3. So you put out Waka, he gives himself a counter. Then you do Yuna, who pulls Orin from the break zone, and you can even pay with that. And then, so if you're on damage 3, she buffs up every other Guardian by 2,000. And Orin will also gain 3,000 himself. So Orin's now a 9k that you have to target. Waka now has all 3 of his counters, so he's raring to go. Tidus is now going to be free. And if anything, like, this deck does feel slightly underwhelming before damage 3, because for the most part, none of their bodies are that strong, but Yuna giving that field buff that then again Orin is protecting her. And if you ever get it on damage 5, where she becomes free with the backup reactivation and pulls one of the Guardians out, like, man, I just love it. And again, I don't know why I just didn't really rate it super high when I saw it, but pulling back, I usually target Orin because I like to get the Waka first, but sometimes that's how you get Waka back. Trust me, your opponents are not going to want Waka to stay on the field, so having her pull him back is just feels good. Just feels good. I really like this card.
Yeah, I think myself included, a lot of people, you know, we looked at this card and we were like, well, I have to, you know, get my backups out, and then there's not a whole lot of Guardians, and, you know, there's not so much going on there. And then they're like, well, you could just like play this on turn 2, like turn 1 or turn 2, and you just go kill your opponent. And that has been a good strategy against, you know, like Sky Pirates, for example, where they kind of take some time to set up. Not as good against, you know, the Samurais of the format, where, you know, they're just, okay, well, I'm just gonna kill it, you know, like. So I think that the card is good. it's definitely like if you're playing the Guardian deck, the one to go for. I think I was kind of expecting it to do more outside of the Guardian deck too, just like as like a something that Lulu can pick up, and then you do the backup reactivation thing, and then sometimes Lulu gets buffed, or maybe you have a couple of Orin in there that does something. But I think in general, it's kind of proven itself to be limited to the Guardian strategy, which isn't bad by any means, but. Yeah, it's been I've been overwhelmed by some aspects and underwhelmed in others, but all in all, I think the card is quite solid.
Great aspect. So moving from one lovely lady to the next, here we have Lulu, another card that I guess when I first read it, it's like, gets you a summon back. Okay, we have cards that do that. We've got Tarot, we've got Citra, but man, again, this is a card that playing it just feels good. And Lulu, I think, is even more potent than I first realized. I think one, she works in the Guardian package because, again, Yuna is so important. And so I've had people, okay, well, I'm going to Amaterasu the Yuna. It's like, okay, now that I know you blew that, here comes Lulu. Let me get back Yuna. Here comes Yuna. And getting a summon is, of course, just generically good. And then she works well with Braska, too, and she works well on her own. The fact that her second ability, you can make any Brynhildr say, this will now kill anything. Or if you have any other card, like the version I have, has Remora. And it's kind of nice because I can play Remora even if I don't have a huge hand, because as long as I end up with 3, Yuna's going to set it to 5, -6, dead. Unfortunately, it doesn't work with 2 CP Diabolos. I thought it did. Ugh, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, like, way more potent than I originally thought. So cool. And unfortunately, it doesn't quite work with Braska's in that you're not casting a summon when you do his special ability, but still really cool card that, again, when I first saw it, I was like, meh, that's okay. But now that I'm playing with it, like, this card's awesome.
Yeah, I had pretty high expectations because Wind didn't have any way to recur summons. You kind of did like these awkward things where like maybe you had Citra in your Wind deck, but then you had to play like a light card that you didn't really want to play. There was kind of like some of that sort of tension. Lulu's just like, well, you know what? Just don't worry about that. Don't worry about light cards. I got you, bro. And so yeah, I've had a lot of good experiences with this card. I expect to see this card become like a total staple. I think it works really well with all of the mono wind casting stuff that they want us to do. You play Zidane. One of the things about mono wind before was like, once you ran out of chocobos, like you were gone. There were no more chocobo. You couldn't cast chocobo anymore. And now Lulu's, well, actually, I can get chocobo. And then you put the Lulu back in your hand with Bismarck, and it's just your opponent's just like, oh my god, there's no end. It just keeps going forever. My opponent's drawing a bunch of cards. Yeah, and the body leaves a little bit to be desired. She's a 3 CP 5k. It would be nice if she didn't die to Brynhildr, but pick your battles. It's like this is definitely one that's going to be used for days to come. Probably, I would say, convincingly the best card out of the FF10 starter deck.
Well said. Next we have Orin, and again, so I don't know why, but I feel like I underrated a lot of these cards that now that I've played with them feel really good. Or again, especially on damage 3, if you have the Yuna out, and this guy is a 9,000 magnet that only costs you 2, that, by the way, if he dies, he's also just going to give you a card back just because. And even before then, like, again, sometimes his power is a little underwhelming because it's just a 4K, even though they have to choose him. If he's only 4K, it's really easy to, okay, well, Brynhild or Emerald Blaze or just, whatever really easy removal they have. But when he gets up there, he becomes a problem for people, and they're just like, crap, what do? I want to take out the Yuna because she's buffing all of them, or the Orin's the thing I got to target. So I am curious and I'm curious to hear what you would say about this. Do you think you would ever run this outside of the Guardian package? Because obviously you lose the card draw, but I've seen just how good magnets can be in like Ice with Charlotte. So would you ever run this outside of the Guardian package?
It doesn't seem out of the question that you would run it outside of the Guardian package, but you don't get the draw unless you have a Summoner or a Guardian, which kind of turned it off for me, I would say. I tried it in like a Fire Wind when I wanted to do just like a light water splash so I could play Leviathan and Orin and then have Yuna bring back the Orin or use him as part of the cost for Grand Summon or something like that. It was kind of a lot less potent than it was in Wind Water Guardians, where he's just like actually just a total powerhouse in that deck. So I do think his use is a lot more limited than I had expected, and that kind of goes along what I was saying with Yuna also being more limited on the decks that can really make use of her. So I think there's that. That being said, you can only be so bad if your job is to protect Palamon Porum. So
yeah,
that does seem like something that it could potentially come up in the future.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Next we have Riku, possibly the cutest member of the group. And so Riku, I think I easily rated it the weakest of the cards because it was pretty slow. It had to wait till it attacked. And I still do kind of feel that way. However, I will say this. If you have Yuna on the field and Riku becomes a 10K and she gets her second effect, or I mean, it's technically all one effect, but she gets the effect that's buffed by... I haven't lost a game since that's going off because it is strong. So you just jump something out of the way, dump it, and you draw a card for some reason. And if it's their only forward, you then immediately knock it into damage, which is just cool. So like, she's definitely a little slow, but if you can get to that point when you start resolving that on attack and you're just pushing stuff out of the way, like, just feels insane. So there's Riku.
Yeah, Riku is kind of a ride or die kind of card, which is not where I usually find myself putting faith in for FFTCG in particular, I should say.
Yeah.
That being said, Riku is she has a soft spot in my heart since I got the other one banned, and she's one of my favorite characters in FF10. Actually, probably my favorite character from FF10. So I do want to play her, but every time I've played her, I've kind of been left a little disappointed. That being said, I will definitely buy a full art of this card because it looks gorgeous.
Absolutely. Okay, so now I've a phrase I've gotten to say a lot lately playing this is "Okay, you asked for it." I love Waka. I think John DiMaggio does a great job with his voice. But he's never had a good card in this game. Like, they've always just been either like, kind of support cards or just old one. Well, I guess he had the anthem. The water anthem was always, what it was.
Yeah.
This card is awesome. I was very surprised at how good this card is, simply because, he revolves around his special, but unlike other cards where, like, well, you just got to find a way to pay for it. The fact that you can pay for it alternatively with the real counters is amazing. Like I said, there's that explosion play I mentioned. Waka by himself. Yuna Orin. Okay, Waka's already loaded up. And then again, sometimes I'll have Tidus and draw the next Waka. And what's great is that you can you use it at the most optimal time for you. So I'll just wait till my opponent, does their thing. Okay, here comes Braska's. All right, well, while you have to pick Orin, Waka, get rid of him. I had someone drop Susanoo on me. Oh, you're going to board wipe me, but Waka's going to blank him first, so no one's going to get removed from the game because you have no damn abilities when it dies. Like, it's just so useful. And again, like, oh, you've got a great break zone trigger? Yeah, actually, you have nothing. Now get out of here. Like, and the fact that it can just pick anything, like, I want to see more stuff like this in the future in regards to specials. I love these alternative costs. Love this card, man. He's so... I've had a lot of people just like, oh, this card's frustrating. Again, they're trying to kill it, and then the orange protecting it. Yeah. Like, feels so good.
Yeah, thank God this card is basically limited to one deck. There's you really cannot play it in any other deck because you're just never gonna get the 3 real counters out fast enough. You're never gonna have extra copies of Waka to actually use a special. That's when it gets really frustrating. I'm gonna be honest. When I played against the deck, I'm like, okay, he has 4 real counters, so I gotta play around it once, and then it's just oh yeah, but I also just have Waka in hand, and I can just use this special. I'm like, God, it's just so impossible to kill it. And that's when the card gets real. And he goes to. I was like, okay, well at least I have Brynhildr, but then he goes to 7K when you have Yuna, and you can't kill the Ord in the first place, and you're just like, it's so hard compared to everything else in the game. So this card is really good. Very, very limited in usage, but it is very, very strong in the Guardian deck. So if you do play Guardians, this is going to be, I think this is well served as the centerpiece of that deck. And it is incredibly strong in that sense. Do not underestimate this card.
Yeah. Okay, you asked for it, brother. All right, now we have another center. Again, I really underrated all these cards, and I think in general, you're right that they are kind of pigeonholed into the Guardians deck. I don't think you can really play, but in there, they do feel great. So here's Tidus. At first, I was a little underwhelmed by this because I was like, well, he's a light card. He only does 2 power buff on attack. However, they actually kind of need that because, again, without that Yuna power bump, they're all pretty tiny. So that attack ends up being quite relevant. And, man, if he's free, I can't tell you how good it feels to be like, for free, let me search out either the Yuna, the Waka special, or what I like to do is get his father Jekt, especially when I have Jekt on the field. Be like, I'm just going to go get Jekt blocked, so you can go fuck yourself because I'm going to cancel whatever you do. And what I've done with this, little tricks for this too, folks, is that so Jekt, when he enters the field, he says, choose a forward. You know, if one thing's attacked, bounce it. If three things attack, break it, draw a card. Well, here's the thing about that effect. It's mandatory. So if they have no forwards, you have to pick one of your own. So I have Tidus for free. Go get Jekt, you know, after one person attacked. Play Jekt, bounce Tidus back to my hand. Tidus for free again, go grab another Jekt. And my opponent, like I was playing my friend the other night, and he was just like, he's like, he knows I have Jekt block in hand. So he's like, well, what do I do? If I play anything, I have to hit the Orin, but if I do any board wipe, you're just going to go, nope. Like, it feels so good. Like, I really think the cost reduction is what makes him so good, because if you had to pay for him, I don't think it would feel, but to be able to just go for free, let me pull out the most important thing from my deck. What would you like to do now? Like, man, feels good. Also, the full art foil of this looks amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that I was like, I didn't think much of it when I first read the text, and then when I was playing against it, they played it against me for free, and I was like, wait, but it can't become 0, right? And then I like read the card, and I was like, oh, wait, what? Like, thank God that like Mune is banned, right? Because you imagine if you just like if you got to play Tidus for free and then Mune it back to your hand and then play Tidus for free, it's like, it's so crazy. And yeah, I've had it played against me. I played it myself. The Jekt bouncing it back to your hand and then playing it again for free. I almost think that feels better than blowing up your opponent's card and drawing a card a lot some of the times. So it's just actually just somehow better. And it's been quite good for me. I really like the card. Again, this Tidus in particular, I don't think it conflicts. Obviously, if you could play both, you would play both in the Guardians deck, the new one, Legend one, and the Light one. But this one is just like so good in the Guardians deck that it doesn't really feel like you would ever give up the Light one for the new one. So yeah, I don't really feel like they're conflicting quite as much as you might expect.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because I had several people as I was playing this against them, they're like, well, you're going to swap that out for the new one. I was like, I don't know, man. The new one's cool and all, but this one is just so like clearly geared for this deck. And like you said, it just feels so good. So I've been pretty high on all these. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to go to the one that I'm probably the least high on, and this is Sin, but you know, it is a Sin. So I do like that they made an updated version of the Opus 7 Sin, because that was always a neat card. You know, I know Giga Graviton was never a serious thing, but it was just kind of neat to see an alternate win condition. To have this kind of indiscriminate board wipe. And I'm glad that this one doesn't deal you a point of damage, so you can use it on damage 6. As a matter of fact, if you use it on damage 6, you just get all the benefit and none of the downside. I don't know how relevant the search thing is. Clearly, it's meant to be there off of the Jekt. And obviously, you could search it off a brother, and then it kind of a neat effect that, you know, you could search, pay another 3, and then just break something. Again, I don't know how relevant that is. However, the way I see this card, and please tell me if you see it differently, is that in a day and age where Susano exists for 6, and he's got to get a bit of a backup, you know, we have Shintoto for 7, we have Titan for 7, we have Philia for 8, like, having to pay 9 for a dark card to board wipe, like, it just feels too expensive these days. Like, we have cheaper options, so unfortunately I'm not really high on this card.
Yeah, I basically totally agree with you. I've had some people which by some like mental gymnastics are like, well, Leviathan costs 9, so clearly this is a playable board wipe. And I'm like, whoa, you can discard Leviathan for CP, bro. Like, it's a very different card. So I think for Sin to be good, you have to fulfill 2 conditions, and that's you have to be able to use the top effects, and you have to be able to use the bottom effect. And there's just like, that's just not a thing that you can do. You can search the card and then blow your opponent's stuff up, and then it rots in your hand for the rest of the game. Like, you can't not just like leave it there. And I mean, you could maybe it's possible to like play like Moogle and Poo Poo and like cycle these out of your hand, but then you're kind of like you're drawing more cards from your deck, which means it's more likely that you like draw a Sin and then you can't search it. So it's like less. There's just like no thing going on there that makes it really feel like it has like a great payoff. Now, like, I can imagine a world where like someday, like in the far future or something, you get a card that says like reveal one card in your hand, put it back in your deck, and then search for a card with the same name. That would be like really cool. You could like put this in back, search this in, pay 3, bust a thing, and like do that every turn. And that would be really, really potent, really, really cool. Like how far in the future that is, I have no idea. I don't think that this card really has any potential use until something along those lines comes up in the game.
Yeah, well said. It'd be interesting if we could ever abuse it like that. But for right now, that's just a fantasy world we're living in. Folks, that is it for Opus 16. We have covered every card here. Really satisfied with the 10 cards. Got to play them. So, Jared, any overall thoughts you got for me on the set? I know, obviously, you're very high on Agrius. That was a card that stood out to you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like cards that like caught me off guard that I was like, oh, that was better than I was thinking. I know Y'shtola was a disappointment. It does feel like, you know, we've all complained about Ice for a while, and it feels like they did make a concerted effort to give Ice a boost this set. Lightning, maybe not so much. Wind gets strong stuff like it always does, and water seems fine. I'm curious to know, like, I feel like I haven't thought about crystals a whole lot this set, other than maybe with the ice stuff, and maybe that's just what they've always intended. Maybe they never wanted them to be like this thing that was on half the cards in the set. Maybe they were always meant to be just this little smattering, but man, until that Charlotta got revealed too, I know a lot of us were like, are they even going to use crystals this set? Like, there's no crystal cards, so give me some of your thoughts.
Yeah, I think they've made it clear that, like, all elements are not created equal in regards to crystals. Like they have made a pretty concerted effort to make ice and water and lightning the only elements that can generate crystals. Basically every other one is like, well, you can play the backup or you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
That's I thought that was supposed to be like a one set limiting factor. Like, surely we'll be able to play Mono Earth with Robel Akbel next set, right? And then I was like, there's no crystal card in all of Earth in this set, for example. So maybe they'll try to balance that out next set, and we'll see like some Earth and I guess we have some fire crystal cards now, so maybe we'll see some Earth crystal cards and some other stuff. But yeah, boy, they've really knocked it out of the park in regards to ice. I think the set. I think we've gone from like ice being possibly the worst element to possibly one of the top elements almost immediately. I mean, I know it's very early to say that, and it's gonna take a lot to knock down fire, wind, water. Those have been like the top 3 elements for a while now. But I think that ice has gotten a lot this set with the Agris, the Last Well, the Mustadio, Shansoto. Like it feels like they just gave us like a whole new suite of forwards that like Ice would have done anything for to have like spaced out over the last 5 sets maybe, and instead they just kind of like gave us all of it at once. And it seems really well lined up to do aggro stuff, to do value stuff, to be kind of these, you know, hate bear packages, and I expect to see a lot of that going forward. So yeah, it does seem, then again, you know, Wind did get like 5 or 6 like unbelievably strong cards. It's like I when in spoiler season, the first thing we saw with Cecil was like, okay, well, Wind spent like its whole power creep budget on Cecil this set, and then we saw Zidane and Fina, and I was like, oh my god, like this is like insane. And then we opened the full spoiler, and there's Atomos, and I was like, this can't be happening. Like, just like so many win cards. I think that Ice got enough of an aggro boost that maybe Wind isn't as much of a problem as you would expect it to be. I think it'll obviously still be very, very strong, but hopefully if Ice is really popular, Ice just like, well, you just go kill Wind if they're being like really greedy, and that would be a nice change of pace, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that. It's so kind of funny that I'm like an Ice defender now, or an Ice player, because when I started, I hated the thing, because I had this guy at my locals who he only played mono ice discard. I was just getting locked and Sephiroth into oblivion, never had cards in my hands, and I abhorred it for the longest time, but truly, I just want to see all the elements be viable. Again, I understand, it's going to be hard to make 6 different elements all top tier at the same time, but just, yeah, that like you could play a lightning deck and feel like you can at least stand a chance against, you know, Sky Pirates or Samurais or whatever it is. So I hope you're right about Ice, because it has felt pretty lackluster for a while. So I hope it is it raises up as much as you think it will.
Me too.
Awesome. Well, sir, is there anything else you wanted to say before we sign off here? Or?
I think we're good.
Awesome. Folks, thank you so much for joining. I have to give a big thank you, of course, to Jared. You can check out his writings at FFTCG Crystarium. I'll put a link in the description below. Him and his team write a bunch of fun stuff. They've got spoilers, usually got deck musings, and just a lot of great old articles on there, too. Sometimes I'll go back, reread them. A lot of good ruling stuff as well. So, Jared, thank you so much for being here. I know these are always kind of a trek to get through all these, but it's always nice to do it not only with someone else, but I love hearing different opinions. You opened my eyes on a lot of cards and stuff that I wouldn't have even thought about. So thank you kindly for being here.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. Well, folks, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them in the comments. Let me know what your favorite cards are. What are ones that took you by surprise? You know, do you want to see more crystals? You're like, who cares about crystals? All that good stuff. Until then, enjoy Opus 16. I hope it turns out to be a wonderful set. And take care.
Thanks for tuning in.